Yeah.
Anymore.
All right, camera situated. All right, we will call the meeting in order at 10:02. Roll call, please.
Lee,
Here.
Mike.
Here.
Brian.
He's here, he's waving.
Randy.
And he's there.
Mike Marlowe.
Marlo's here.
Stephanie.
Here.
Ed.
Here.
Rondwin.
Here.
Then we have Chair Kestner who's there, and I did see Commissioner Lerner.
She's gonna rejoin it.
Okay, she should be rejoining in a moment.
I was muted. Did you get me?
Yes.
Okay.
All right, discussion possible action to excuse committee members. I don't think we have any excused absences. Housekeeping?
That's me. I'm housekeeping as we speak. There we go. Okay. Someone's having a hard time getting in. Okay, everyone, here's my normal spiel, which is that if you're in the room, it's hybrid meeting, if you're in the room, that's the microphone. Don't have to yell, but if you're in the way back, don't whisper. Speaking of don't whisper, don't have side conversations because it will immediately pick up those conversations and that is what will be heard by the masses. So we don't want that. And then if you are virtual, it looks like all our committee members have their cameras on, but we ask that you have your cameras on. It's helpful if you stay muted, but as a member, you should feel free to speak up whenever as though you're in the room. You also have that raise hand function, which depending on which version you're using, it's either down in the bottom like a hand or it's up at the top like a hand. And you can push that and it will actually put you in order. It'll have like a 1, a 2, and a 3 based on like order of hands being raised, which is super helpful to those who are calling on people. We try and keep an eye out for that. To the extent we have not, then you may just have to unmute and be like, my hand is up. But we do try and catch all of that. And then if you are not a committee member, we do ask that you have your camera off and your mic off unless you're actively doing something in the meeting, just so that way we've got our committee member folks on the screen. And that's really, that's it. And then sign in if you're wanting credit. Look, I remember.
All right. Item number 4, remarks from the chair. Nothing big. This is our final meeting of the year. We just, as a heads up, there is one public member slot that will be vacated at the end of this year. And the process has already started to interview candidates for that. So that will be happening soon, and that will happen. We'll see the effects of that at our January meeting. Is the camera doing that automatically as soon as she goes out of frame like that?
Like the office.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's
It zooms in.
pretty cool. Okay. All right, so Vanessa can't sneak off without it being on camera.
I did zoom in.
Yeah, it zoomed out.
So
It
shameful.
had everything out. I like it. It was kind of nice. Okay. Ratification of the minutes of the July 15th, 2024 meeting. Those were online video minutes. Does anybody have any modifications that need to be done to the July 15 minutes? Seeing no hands, hearing nothing, those will stand ratified. Item number 6, general comments from visitors or written comments on non-agenda items. Do we have any comments from visitors or written comments on non-agenda items? I didn't see any submitted with the materials, so we didn't have that. Everybody's heads buried, so I think we're okay there.
Wow. Miracles.
I know. They got it's a first. All right. I know. Item number 7, reports from subcommittees. Education subcommittee.
Okay, good morning. Mike Sample-Dill, Education Manager. I'm filling in for Jen Wheeler today. The education.
Actually, sorry, hang on. This isn't for the
Oh, I'm sorry.
education
Yeah,
division for staff reports. This is for education subcommittee.
Committee.
Sorry.
Got it.
Just
Sorry.
clarification. Your SOP or your
No,
education.
we're-
Yeah.
Had a very short meeting. I know one item's already on the main agenda, so I won't even cover that. That's about the basically proctoring stuff for exams. One thing that we did discuss was credit for ICC certification.
Okay.
And we kind of discussed that for about 20 minutes. And basically, where we left it is Jennifer Wheeler is gonna approach the ICC board, whatever they're called, to propose to them to basically get licensed
As a provider.
As a provider. So we'll see where that goes.
There's been that, just for people who don't know, that's been an ongoing conversation for a long time about ICC getting credit for ICC courses. So hopefully we'll get some headway made on that because I think those can be very, very valuable. All right. SOP subcommittee.
Sure. SOP committee met. We continuing to work through line kind of section by section of the SOP. Spent a lot of time discussing roof inspections in that, trying to kind of come to some consensus and ideas, how drones interplay with that, what that means, whether people need to be on the roof, what the language means. But that's sort of where we're at in the walkthrough process, and we don't have any formal recommendations or things to request of the formal committee at this time.
Okay. Anybody have any questions for SOP? All right, then we'll move on to number 8, staff reports, TREIC Enforcement Division.
Good morning, Tony Renteria, staff attorney and liaison for the inspector committee. And we only have 3 enforcement actions since the last meeting. If anybody has any questions about any of these cases, just let me know. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I do have a question on 243624. Now that was a long one. There was definitely a lot there. Completely understand and agree with 99%. One of the questions that I had is on item number 6 in that agreed order. Said the inspection report noted the attic was inaccessible and could not be expected except from limited view at middle carport closet. Based on limited viewing, we cannot access accurately or assess accurately insulation, ducting, wiring, framework, sheetrock. The report had included limited photos of what respondent could see. Respondent checked the inspected box, however, failed to mark the not inspected box in the roof structures and attic section of the report. Like I said, I agree with 99% of what's in there, but this one I have a little bit of a concern with, that basically they're being disciplined for not checking the inspected and the not inspected box. And if that's the standard that we're going to start doing whenever something is, some piece of a section is inaccessible, that we're now having, that enforcement's now saying that we're required to inspect or check both boxes, I kind of have a problem with that. Because every attic is going to have areas that you cannot inspect. Every single one. There isn't going to be one.
Every crawl space.
So this section is basically telling inspectors, reading it at face value, that every single attic you better have inspected and non-inspected checked on every single one. And that's where I kind of have a problem with that.
All right, this is John's case, and I'll have him kind of explain the rationale. But I do want to note that there was only 2 violations listed on here. One was for performing a real estate inspection in a negligent, incompetent manner. That's a negligent reporting. So everything gets lumped in to negligent reporting.
Right.
So the minimum for that negligence is 500. The maximum is 3,000. The second one has to do with the inspection form.
Okay, back up. 503,000.
Right. Yes, is the limits. So 500. So I wanted to note that the administrative penalty was only $750. So it's not like we're doing 500 for each.
Dollars. $500 to $3,000. Okay. I thought you were talking about a score system.
No. That's the penalty.
What they were actually fined, not really my concern. I'm not questioning y'all on that. No issue with that. My concern here is specifically number 6, where the order is detailing out what the inspector did wrong. Because most inspectors look at a lot of these disciplinary actions as a template for what not to do. How do I not get a disciplinary action against me? I'm going to go through all these disciplinary actions and make sure I don't do any of those things. And number 6, that's
sure.
That's what
All right. So here's the way we handle, let's say this was the only thing that was on there.
Okay.
All right. We have several disciplinary tools. One of them would be the advisory letter. The advisory letter would not be something where they would get formal discipline. On this one, they were already getting formal discipline.
Completely.
So this is a little bit of an educational that got lumped in to inform the inspector. So it wasn't like, like I was saying, it wasn't that we took each one and we increased the penalty for each violation. But I'll let John kind of give his take on this one.
Yes, John Kanopic, TREIC Enforcement. So yes, this was a situation where we kind of lumped everything into negligent reporting, where he just reported multiple, he's putting multiple deficiencies in the comment section for each system and component. And we didn't have any evidence that what those reports were wrong or negligent. It was more like failing to check the appropriate boxes, such as failing to check the deficiency box in multiple sections. And this was included in because he has a specific comment saying the attic was inaccessible and could not be inspected except for a limited view. So based on that, it's not real clear if he's just saying he can only just peer his head in and not be able to see anything, or based on what he's reporting, we don't really know what he could see or what he couldn't see. He's just saying, but he's marking it as, so we don't know, by just marking as inspected without any deficiencies, we don't really know what all he could see or what could be reported. So he's not, and if he wasn't really able to conduct an inspection of the attic, he needs to include a check mark saying it's not inspected. Just based on what he's putting in his report, we were not really sure what was done or what was inspected on that date.
When I do an inspection, whether if I just get my head up in the attic or walk the attic, I mark it inspected, but I also put notes that there are parts I couldn't inspect.
Same.
But I never write up or mark not inspected. And it does seem like this being in this disciplinary document, I mean, this is like a court ruling. It's almost like it sets precedent
Right.
saying
That's my
that's what
concern.
we're required. So, yeah, I agree with Lee that it's a concern that.
I think a lot of it's
Like you
factual
say.
based, so we have to look at it from a factual perspective. So in this case, it was unclear, so this is more clarified. Like, if you're not getting up there at all or whatever, then you need to put not inspected. Or alternatively, like Mike said, put where your limitations are, so at least the client's educated in that situation.
But
So.
didn't it say he did that? It said he was able to inspect it from
He
the
took photos from what he could
cardboard
see.
access or whatever he
So-
said.
So your point is well taken. I think you're making a good point. The point that I'm trying to make here is that had this been the only violation, you would not have seen an order on this.
But that isn't a violation.
That is part of it. When we write up an order, is we also try to educate. Like towards the end, you can see some mitigation that the inspector now understands how to do things properly. I think the problem is we do have an instruction sheet that was promulgated by this committee that gives instructions on how to properly, and the rule, in fact, was amended. In the past, the rule just said provide comments. The rule changed to specifically say when there are multiple boxes,
If you choose to check multiple boxes, a
you have to
reason has to
explain
be
why. Exactly. You have to explain why. And then there's an instruction sheet that explains how to apply this rule when it's appropriate to check multiple boxes. So I think on this particular section, again, your point is well taken. If this was the only thing on there and we issue disciplinary action, then I think that would be an issue. If it was the only thing as a violation. The problem is that the violations that were penalizing the inspector are outlined. There are multiple things.
Right.
He was not penalized in addition to what we're alleged for that particular violation, but it was lumped in there as more of a educational. So, and we do that when something, when we write an order, we outline the violations, but we also try to educate the inspector on how to do it right.
Hang on, before we go. Mike Marlowe.
Hey, so if we go with the not inspected for any section, there, we'd be marking it not inspected for every single section. If we go by this rule, right?
Right.
Because there's always something you can't see. You can't see the wiring in the walls. You can't see, whatever. So are we making the boxes useless at this point?
And I see what you're saying, and I kind of have some similar concerns. Like I said, it's if you take away the other 20 things, and we just had this, and this was the only thing, which is how I am as a reader. I'm going to look at these as each individual things that enforcement can come and hit me on. And so I look at number 6 and saying, okay, well, now by this, what you're writing in here, you're telling me that if there's some piece of this that I can't inspect, I better check inspected and not inspected. Now, I know some people, there are some inspectors, and we beat that conversation to death about checking all 4 boxes. If you want to do that as a business practice, cool, that's fine. And we're not going to restrict you from doing that, which is part of why that new rule was put into place. Me, however, and a good number of other inspectors, you check all 4 boxes, you're going to confuse the living daylights out of the consumer.
It becomes useless.
Yeah.
It's completely confusing to put all 4 boxes on there. If you want to do it as a business owner and you want to have that conversation with your client, fine. But I think generally, if you have all 4 boxes checked, which I understand the argument for some people saying they can, that's all fine and dandy. But the rule reads that if you check more than 1 box, you got to have an explanation. They had an explanation that they took pictures from what they could see, that and put in a limitation in the comments of, hey, it's only limited to what we can see. That seems to be covered. And I get that the rest of the other things were, they didn't check the deficient box. Completely understand that, no problem. But to put this in there tells inspectors that you have to check the inspected and the not inspected box. And if we're just talking about the attics, that's going to be every single attic in every house that we go to, because there isn't anything in every attic you can see everything.
And I think that feedback makes sense. I do. So we can take that. I mean, we can't change this order.
We don't need
But
to
I think-
change this.
Right,
order
but I think
because
we
the
can, I hear what you're saying, and I
Okay.
think we all do. So that's why we bring these, right?
Yeah.
Is for your feedback. So that's helpful.
I just want to make sure for future reference.
Totally.
And again, I think your point is well taken.
Okay.
We do acknowledge the feedback, but I also want to make clear that we did not tack on any additional. If we take that out, the order would have been the same. We would not have gotten any additional disciplinary action.
But then you say you add this stuff as education.
That
And
was,
if we're adding that as education, it sounds like we're trying to educate to do both boxes.
and again, I think your feedback is well taken. I think in the future, that is something we'll consider. And had we done this as the only disciplinary issue, I think I would definitely see that shouldn't have done.
Yeah.
And there's different educational tools that we use, like an advisory letter or a violation, like you mentioned. But I think, like Vanessa said, this is good feedback for us.
Okay. Fair enough. Anybody else have any questions for Enforcement Division? Okay, hearing none. Education and Exams Division.
I can talk. I was just excited. Good morning again. Mike Sampledale, Education Manager, phone in for Jen Wheeler today. The education reports begin on page 5 of your meeting materials. Page 5 and 6 reflect a total number of qualifying and ICE courses approved this fiscal year. We approved 14 new inspector qualifying courses and a total of 252 inspector CE courses. Page 7 is a month-over-month comparison of the last 13 months. And then the next report after that is a 5-year look back of applications approved by application type. Qualifying providers and courses are approved for a 4-year term, and the numbers in 2020 as compared to 2024 similar. We look to these numbers as indicators of what we can expect to see from year to year in terms of applications. And as you can see, they remain consistent. However, you'll notice the year over year continued increase in both CE providers and CE courses. And this is a trend that we've been following. For example, on fiscal year 2024 saw a 16% increase in CE provider applications over fiscal year 2023. And similarly saw an almost 5% increase in CE course applications approved in 2024 over 2023. Also, a total of all applications combined going back 5 years is included on page 9 of the materials. And we continue to cross-training efforts among staff and other processing times are remaining within our established goals. And this concludes my report, and happy to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions for Education and Exams Division? All right. Licensing Division.
Good morning, Denise Sample, Director of Licensing. And I'm, as I direct you to page 11 of the materials, I'm seeing here that the inspector year-to-date applications received for professional have been cut off, but I have those numbers in front of me. So not to keep you in suspense much longer, but we ended August of 2024 with 518 professional inspector applications received over the year, and that's compared to 522 for the previous fiscal year. So that blue column is 522, and the orange one is 518. On any questions about that?
Nope.
All right. So moving on to page 13 of your materials. You can see on the right-hand side the renewal activity. So the inspectors are on the right-hand side and broken out by rank. And so we hone in on those bold percentage numbers at the bottom to compare fiscal year 22 to fiscal year 24. And so that's because all of these licenses are on a 2-year renewal cycle. So we want to compare, the similar timeframes for the renewal rates. The next page is the total license holder and registrant counts. So the inspectors are kind of in the center of the page, and you'll see we ended August with 4,562 total licensed inspectors, and of those, 3,822 are active. The next page with the bar graph in yellow has the inspectors grand total, and this is the sum across all the different ranks together. And so you'll see that 13-month trend. The next report on page 16 is our application processing time. And so just as a reminder for everyone, this is the amount of time on average it takes licensing staff to process an application, and it excludes any time that it takes the applicant to pass the exam or clear, the criminal history check or provide us documentation. And so our goal is 14 days to process an application, and we've hit those numbers well, really across all the license types, but in particular with the inspector applications there. And that concludes my report. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Licensing Division? Okay, hearing none. And I apologize, I want to go back to number 4 really quick. I apologize, I neglected to mention it. Michael Marlowe, who's here, who made a comment here a moment ago, has been chosen to replace an inspector member that has resigned. And I think technically it's not official until the November commission meeting, right? Or is it official now?
It's official.
Yeah.
Okay, so,
Because they've named the alternate.
okay, so I just wanted to make sure. All right, so
He's in.
you're in. Welcome, Mr. Michael Marlowe. I apologize for not saying something earlier. I just kind of, I get stuck in the motion. And I believe it was Education Subcommittee that he'll be going on, right? Is that the
If you
slot that
would like to, yeah, if you'd like to sit in on an education subcommittee meeting, to the extent what happens between now and January, we can add you to that. It's not a forever.
Sure, wherever you need me.
And then just as a footnote, in January, we reorganize everything, pick new officers, chair, vice chair, secretary, and then reorganize the subcommittees as well. But it may not be a bad way to just kind of at least dip your toe into the subcommittees and see what's going on. But I just want to say welcome, and I apologize for not saying that earlier.
No problem. Thanks. Good to be here.
Hey, we,
Yes,
I think we're actually, and if we're going back in time, I need to go back in time.
sure.
To item 5.
Okay.
I think we actually may need to officially do that, and by that I mean not take
You'll
action.
vote?
No, at the next meeting, I need to work with the finalization of those before. So it's, I need to get with Mike Morgan on them.
Okay.
So Mike's like, what? Who has no idea that I need to get with him.
I saw the look of surprise on his face.
Yeah.
Fair enough. All right, item number 9, discussion possible action regarding factoring and identification requirements in 22 TAC as follows. 535.65 responsibilities and operation of providers of qualifying courses, 535.70 definitions, and 535.72 approval of non-elective continuing education courses.
That's me. So in a second, I'll share my screen with some updated language, but I wanted to give you some background first. So this is coming to you originally from a recommendation from ESAC. This was made at ESAC's July meeting. And the discussion was twofold. One, to deal with some language involving checking of photo ID for courses, for qualifying courses. And then the second part was looking at the proctoring requirements. So taking the first idea. So ESAC had some concerns, and this is in Rule 535.65 about the language in that rule where it says currently check photo ID of a student. And they felt that was a bit too narrow in language, and it was leading some to have some security concerns because what's currently happening is often students are holding up a picture of their photo ID in a classroom course that's delivered through use of technology. And so there were some concerns about is that secure? Are there better ways to do that with the advent of a lot of course technology that we maybe didn't have when this rule was originally in place? So they asked staff to come back with some draft language that maybe made that a little more broader and gave providers a little more wiggle room to rely on other technology measures to verify that identity. So that was the first request. The second request had to do with proctoring, and that had to do with a discussion about is proctoring actually needed for these qualifying courses and in some cases non-elective continuing ed courses. The conversation surrounding that was, this was put in place, I think about almost 10 years ago now, by another iteration of ESAC, where there were some concerns about, I think, exam integrity and, having this sort of experience over the past 10 years, many thought that the requirements were onerous, burdensome, and that the fact that the licensing exam itself is proctored perhaps made the need to proctor a qualifying course exam or a non-elective course exam not as necessary. And so they asked staff to actually take out references to the proctoring requirements, and they would look at it at the October meeting. So we, because anytime you're dealing with education rules, they also impact inspector courses and providers who teach or offer rather inspector courses, we wanted to share with you. So we did share with the education subcommittee, and now we're bringing it to you after it's been viewed by ESAC. So ESAC did have one change to the draft that we presented to the education subcommittee originally. So I'm going to share my screen so you can see that. Okay, so the change here was in 535.65C, what used to be 1, and here had language not originally, but we had added language that had to deal with a monitor, and it had a reference to per 20 students essentially. So they requested that that language be removed, just go back to what the current language says, because they felt putting a number was tying hands, and depending on the provider, there may be situations where they would need more than 1 monitor for even less that, or they would be fine with a monitor for even more students. So they felt like that was a little too restrictive. So that language has been pulled out. And so what you're seeing right here is what has been recommended. There are no other changes that ESAC made during their October meeting. But this language is what ESAC recommended to move forward pending your thoughts. So kind of a roadmap looking forward. What you could do today, you could say this version looks great. We're okay with it moving forward to the commission for proposal in November. You could say, wait a second, I don't think this should apply to inspector courses or providers who offer inspector courses, and we could rework the rule to accommodate that. And that would mean we would not present this at the November meeting for proposal. We would likely send it back to ESAC as well for their January meeting. Those are probably the most likely 2 options. If you had a tweak, we could maybe make that change as well and still present it, but just kind of wanted to give you some idea of what we're looking at in case you do have changes.
So can you explain the proctoring change?
So it's essentially removing any reference to a proctoring requirement from the rule. So in, for instance, 535.65, this has to do with qualifying courses, its responsibilities and operations of providers of qualifying courses. So any reference you see to a proctor, for instance, here is for a qualifying or non-elective CE classroom delivery course, then we've removed the proctoring requirement here that dealt with a remote site, so a broadcast site versus a remote site. Let's see, we've got some language.
For qualifying courses.
This is for qualifying courses.
Not legal SOP, not just basic.
Yeah, we'll get to the non-elective in just a second, but this is for the qualifying courses. So this applies across the board, real estate courses, inspector courses. And so down here, this is the same language that was in your materials, but this has to do with the final exam. So the final exam for these qualifying courses.
So let's take it, it's just not gonna be proctored.
Exactly, yeah. So here's the proctoring language removed. This was number 5 here was basically pulled from actually one of the inspector rules, but it's largely the same as 2 right above it. So just kind of rewording, it's the same concept, but I'm using language that was in another inspector rule that I'll show you in a second. These were the examples of third-party proctors that were acceptable to the commission, just removing that language. In 535.70, these were definitions. So pulling out the definition of proctor, that one's pretty self-explanatory. And then here's the non-elective CE courses. So if you see here number 3, it says inspector non-elective CE courses for distance education delivery. There was a proctoring section that dealt here with the exam, where it said the examination must be proctored by a member of faculty, staff, or third-party proctor set out above in the rule. So that has been pulled out in line with the ask from ESAC to pull out all the other proctoring requirements. So I think that's it.
And then the other piece is the IDing, basically preventing people from having to do that with their ID and show 100 people their name.
Right, exactly. And that, it's just that small change. So in B1,
they still have to verify.
They still have to verify. It's just the thought was checking the photo ID. That language was just a little too narrow.
Fair. Okay. Anybody have any questions on that? I don't see any online. Name?
Shannon Gatewood. I am the San Antonio chapter president for our little things on all the time up there talking to them. I always give them a little TREC update on what's coming. You know, hey, we're having a meeting. This is the topics. One of the things that got brought up by 2 inspectors that have been inspectors for quite a while that pretend, maybe, I don't know, to know all the rules and all the history and everything, is that I guess I don't have all the information. So the state Supreme Court struck down that we cannot provide or cannot require a exam for CE, even if it's non-elective. So, and they were, by golly, TREC is this and TREC is that. If there is a reference that we can throw out there, great. If not, I just want to make that bring that to light that that's what
Was said.
trying to be pushed
Okay.
from some members. So
Okay.
yeah, that's all.
Well, and I mean, I don't think we're aware of anything, but if this is ultimately, if you give your recommendation and this is ultimately proposed, this will go out for public comment. So always welcome public comment.
Absolutely.
Anybody else have any comments on that? Not, then entertain a motion to propose to the commission rules as mentioned.
I make that motion.
Second.
Motion is made. There's a second. Any other discussion on this item? Seeing none, we'll call for a vote. All in favor signify by saying aye or raise your hand if you're on the screen.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Any opposed, say no. Hearing none, that's unanimous. Motion passes.
We didn't count you, Rhonda.
Item number 10, discussion and possible action regarding recommendations related to standards practice 22 TAC 535-227 through 535-233.
This is just a standing item. If anyone has anything they would like to,
From the SOP
from
committee.
the SOP, yeah. So we were moving on to 229, is that right?
Yep, I think Brian said, gave us an update, but there wasn't anything that was coming there, so that was good. All right.
Well, we welcome them. You're always welcome to send in, we can add them to the.
All right, item number 11, request for future meeting agenda items. I think the only thing I had was we got to start looking at the new legal SOP course, probably starting here soon, because it takes a while to put all that together, and we got to start fiddling with that. We'll have obviously the section towards the end for the updates from the next session that happens next year, but we got to start looking at that, redoing that course. Can't believe it's already been that time, but
Seems like we just.
I know it seems like we just did it. So is that something that education subcommittee, or is it like Jennifer Gruby and Jennifer Wheeler will start?
Yeah, it's a whole other group, but
Okay.
usually involves some folks in this room.
So that'll start coming, and we'll probably have more conversations about that in January. But yeah, it is getting close to that time. If you have suggestions that you want to see as far as topics for the new legal SOP course, please bring those to the January meeting, and we can discuss those with Ms. Jennifer Wheeler and possibly Jennifer Gruby if she's here. So, any other future meeting agenda item that anybody has?
You'll have elections and training, annual training.
Election's coming up in January. Sorry, hopeful. Item number 12. Discussion about possible action regarding future meeting agenda dates or future meeting dates. I think we had the one in January set. That one is, I have it as the 27th of January for that one. And then in theory,
April's the 21st.
which is the day after Easter.
Yeah, we usually try and set those dates at the January meeting.
But I was just seeing if we had anybody that had any conflicts with them now, so that we know. But yeah, I mean, the big one is just, we know where the January one is. So April, July.
21st and July too.
Yeah.
But that can be helpful to everyone also when they come in January to know that it's typically the third Monday of those months.
All right, so we had discussed the January 27th one before with everybody. The only one that hasn't. Mr. Marlowe, our next meeting is January 27th. You okay with that date?
You get that far out, you can tell me when to be there.
Fair enough. I just wanted to at least ask you because everybody else had discussed it before, but we
Yeah.
missed it.
No, it's good.
Okay. Fair enough. All right. Anybody have anything else? No hands? All right. With that, we'll adjourn the meeting at 10:42. Thank you, everybody, for coming.
Right.
Yeah.
All right.